I was at the Hilton Hotel in downtown Albany near the Capitol building. It was about 9 o'clock on Thursday evening, and I was not there as a guest, but looking for my wife. She was there with her lover. She didn't know that I knew she had a lover, but I knew. I'd known this for a while, and it was eating away at me, little by little, every day, and I was going to do something about it. I thought long and hard about what to do. A person can only withstand so much. For several months, I looked the other way in the hope that her betrayal would end. But that did not happen. Diana continued her romance with Darren's ranger, all the while pretending to be a faithful and caring wife for me. We talked about our plans for the future and what we want to do. It was all complete nonsense. She didn't mean any of it. I was trying to figure out what I did that made her run to another man and want sex with him. Obviously, I was missing something. I obviously didn't do that for her anymore. I tried to figure out how to let her have fun for now and then return her to the role of a faithful wife, but it was all just nonsense on my part. Once she gets a taste for other men, it will be difficult for her to return to me. I waited for several months, but she showed no signs that she was going to change her ways. Then I decided it was best to just get it over with. I must admit that it took me a while to come to terms with this decision. I work very long hours, often up to 18 hours a day, several days in a row. Was this the reason why my wife turned to another man to satisfy her needs? Was I unconsciously ignoring her? I didn't think so, but obviously something was wrong. But if I wasn't meeting her needs, why not talk to me about it? Why not just say, I need to move on, and be done with it? Why have a guy behind my back and still say useless things to my face like, I love you? Why not act like an adult and tell me that you want to separate and get a divorce? Too many questions and not enough answers, so I came up with a plan. Maybe not ideal, but one I could live with. I wasn't at the hotel to be violent hell. She wasn't worth it at that moment. I wasn't going to do something stupid and beat the crap out of her boyfriend. No, my lawyer warned me against this and said that it would end badly. I would end up in prison and get a criminal record. No, I was just there to get it over with, to put her out of my misery and maybe cause her a few minutes of misery. My name is David Walters. I am 31 years old, born and raised in the Albany area, and I am a physician. I am an emergency doctor and practice at the main hospital in the city, or at least practiced. I have a mother, father, and brother, all nearby. I also have a wife. I recently applied for a leave of absence to recuperate. I'm burned out. I admit it. I didn't tell my wife about it because she didn't care. My own doctor advised me to do this so that I could use my head properly and not die from stress prematurely. I burn the proverbial candle at both ends and sometimes in the middle. I desperately need a rest. After finding out that my wife was cheating with other men, I decided to take a break. My wife's name is Diana Walters. She is 30 years old and works at a national bank in the city. We live in a pretty nice 2-bedroom apartment near the hospital, and we don't have children. Thank God that's the case. Diana is about 173 cm tall, has long, thick brunette hair that goes down below her shoulders, and she looks very good. She attracts the attention of men very easily. Too easy. She is easygoing. We met at the university. I liked her from the very beginning. I met her in an English class I took during my sophomore year. This was a requirement for science students to be able to read and understand more than just technical things. My main focus in that lesson was Diana. I asked her out, and as they say, the rest was history. Up to this day. After university, Diana and I lived together for almost 2 years and got married immediately after graduating from medical college. I was able to graduate without the crushing debt that most medical students face. I was financed by my mom and dad's bank. Yes, I know what you're thinking. The poor little rich child complains and cries about his great misfortune. That would be complete nonsense. While I was in school, I worked damn hard every summer to earn as much money as possible. My family stepped in and helped me, making me promise that I would repay my parents when I finished school and started earning money. Now my family is quite wealthy. My father has a construction and contracting business, and is doing very well. He has over 100 employees and a warehouse filled with materials and equipment that he uses in his business. I worked as a part-time worker for him during the summer, earning minimum wage to pay for the next year's tuition. So I know a lot about hard work. I currently work 18-hour shifts at the hospital and am on call most other days when I have a day off. I already mentioned that I knew she had a boyfriend for a while now. Why haven't I done anything about this until now? Well, that's a fair question. I have to say that I went through several stages of grief over the loss of my marriage before I decided what to do. Yes, at first I was stunned by the realization that Diana was cheating on me. I thought we were a team. I thought that we had the same desires, aspirations, and plans. And then I found out that she was cheating with Iterin. We talked about starting a family. We talked about what kind of children we want. We even started thinking about names for them. Names for boys and girls, and we even looked at houses in the suburbs, damn it. We talked about her taking maternity leave from work as soon as the baby became part of our family. We discussed the pros and cons of her becoming a stay-at-home mom and taking care of the children full-time. Her own mother did the same for her and her brother and sister. We've already opened a savings account for a down payment on a house and for baby expenses. My salary at the hospital was growing rapidly. Last year, they paid me $120,000. I paid my taxes and returned almost $10,000 to my parents. Diana was paid well at the bank, earning around $80,000. We were in great financial shape, and my job as an emergency physician had great earning potential. Most likely in 5 years, I will be earning almost $600,000 per year. We had common dreams. We made plans. We said every day that we loved each other. I loved my wife, and she loved me. At least I thought she loved me. Now, not very much. What's happened? I found out about Diana's betrayal completely by accident. An emergency room nurse was at a restaurant downtown on a date with her husband. She had met Diana the year before at a Christmas party in the hospital, and being very familiar with faces and names, remembered that she was my wife. She also recognized the guy she was with. We'll get back to it soon. I watched as Diana and her boyfriend walked through the hotel lobby and headed towards the elevators. They entered one of them, and he turned to press the button for the floor where he had rented a room. I watched as the light above the elevator stopped at 12. I sat down, looked at my watch, and thought about my plan again. I knew deep down that this was what I needed to do to improve the situation in my life. I cannot tolerate so much disrespect, and today I will correct this small injustice. Today I'll interfere in the boiler. Let's see what comes of this. I went to the front desk and asked them to call the room occupied by one Mr. Darren Ranger. Mr. Pops Ranger is a local business owner who specializes in landscaping and property maintenance. Mr. Ranger makes a very good living for himself, his wife, and 2 sons. So good that he felt it necessary to start an affair with the loan officer of the bank with whom he does business. This loan officer was my wife. Darren and Diana have been enjoying each other's attention for almost 2 years now. Yes, I couldn't believe it when I found out the extent of her infidelity. I found out about this completely by accident when one of the nurses worked the same shift as me and accidentally mentioned that she had seen Diana with her friend Darren's in a restaurant in the city center. The nurse had been there with her husband and friends the previous weekend. That same weekend, I worked 18-hour shifts. She knew Darina because his company was doing work for her husband to build a retaining wall in the backyard, like this. So the cat was let out of the bag. When I was home a few days later, I casually mentioned to Diana that Rhonda had spotted her at a restaurant last week with a friend. I didn't mention that I knew it was Darren, but I asked about the menu and the quality of the food, and maybe we should go there sometime. The pallor on Diana's face quickly returned. She said, "Everything is fine," and left everything as it was. The next week, I did a few things. I talked to my father about what I could or should do if I suspected my wife was being unfaithful. He was shocked that Diana would do something like that. I know that he really liked her and expected that we would have children soon. From our conversation, I took away a basic plan of action to protect myself. We had a long heart-to-heart talk, and at the end we agreed that he would not share information with my mother. I went to my boss at the hospital and shared the information with her too. She agreed that I needed some time off to sort out my shit. She knew my wife, and I could tell by the look on her face that she was disappointed that Diana would do something like that, but she also understood that it happened often. We agreed that I could take 3 months off, and then we would return to my work assignment. I even met with the staff psychiatrist to speak with him, and she agreed that the stress caused by my family situation required some time off to recover. My next task was to pay a visit to the investigation agency and assign them the job of finding out what Diana was up to. It only took them a week of digging, and they had a clear picture of what she and Mr. Cuss Ranger were doing, where they were doing it, and for how long. Hotels maintain records, and for a reasonable cash fee payable to a willing clerk, will make these records available to any interested parties. The state did not have a great law regarding confidentiality of hotel records. A $100 bill handed to the receptionist by the investigator led to a history of Mr. Ranger's business at the hotel over the past 2 years. It turned out that he rented a room there almost every week, regularly, like clockwork. He was almost always there with the same woman. The clerk identified the woman in the photograph as Mr. Ranger's escort. Diana was in the photo. The next thing I did was go to the bank, interestingly not the one my wife worked at, and withdraw every cent I could without closing the account I had there. I have my own credit card, so I didn't have to do anything about it. So, armed with the knowledge that my loving wife was a cheater, I decided it was time to do something about it. I knew that Diana would meet her boyfriend after work, have dinner, and spend a few hours in the hotel room. She thought that that day and night, I had a long shift at the ambulance. He needed to get home to his family, so they didn't stay out late. That morning, right after she left for work, I gathered all the things I planned to take with me and then went down to the garage and began loading my motorcycle. I loaded a few other items into my car, a well-used trusty Subaru Outback, and asked my dad to pick it up later that day and leave it at his place. I didn't pack much, but I had everything I thought I'd need for the next few months on the road. The rest of the day was spent sorting through the little things I wanted to take or get rid of. It was a strange day. It felt like there was a death in my family. In fact, it was the death of my marriage. My motorcycle is a 2016 Honda Africa Twin, equipped with racks, fog lights, heated grips, a navigation system, a crossbar, and a few other features that make my bike ideal for long-distance travel. All I needed to take with me was a few changes of clothes, a toothbrush, a raincoat, and an iPad. I planned to stay off the motorways and explore the countryside. I decided that I would sleep in small-budget hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts, and eat at local establishments off the beaten path. From time to time, I will make rest stops at places where there are interesting things to see and visit. My father always told me that sometimes change is as good as rest. Well, if there was ever a time for change, this was it. My plan was to do one lap around North America. I mapped out a route that would take me to the New England coast in Maine, then into Canada, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia, then a ferry to Newfoundland, landing at Port aux Basques. I will explore the island and leave via Argentina, and then back through New Brunswick to Quebec, Ontario, and then west through the prairies and Rocky Mountains into British Columbia. From British Columbia, my plan was to take the coastal highway south to San Diego, then take a route through the mountains to the Midwest and work my way back through the Midwest to Albany. I figured it would take me 3 months, maybe 4, and by then I would be able to exorcise enough of the demons to move on with my life and get back to work. I was seriously thinking about joining Doctors Without Borders for a year or two, just for a change of scenery. I decided there must be better places to do good work than the in Albany on a Saturday night. How can you put up with so much nonsense? Now, first of all, I needed to deal with my cheating wife. I approached the counter and asked to speak with Darren's ranger. The receptionist picked up the phone and called his number. After several calls, he answered. I picked up the phone from the receptionist. I exhaled like this. "Can I speak to Diana Walters, please?" He hesitated. There's no one here with that name. You must have the wrong number. Just tell her there has been a death in her family." "What?" continued, raising his voice. "Just tell her that her husband is dead. He died today. Tell her David Walters died today." There were no voices on the phone, but I could hear noise in the background and muffled speech. I repeated, raising my voice a little. "Just tell her that her husband is dead." Then I hung up. When I handed her the phone, the receptionist looked at me with wide eyes. I looked at her, smiled and thanked her, and then turned and left the hotel. My motorcycle was parked at the entrance. I put on my gear and helmet and waited a few minutes. Of course, Diana ran out of the hotel and into the street. It was dark enough that she couldn't see me or the motorcycle in her haste to get out of there. She quickly got into a taxi. I decided that she was heading to our apartment. Now it's her apartment. I was heading towards freedom. My God. Someone called and said that David died. What's happened? I need to go home urgently. I got dressed as quickly as I could and ran to the elevator. A few seconds later, I was on the street and took a taxi home. I got to the apartment building and ran inside. The elevator took forever to reach our floor. As soon as the doors began to open, I ran down the corridor and hardly inserted the key into the lock. I ran inside and called David. I searched all the rooms, but he was not there. I sat down at the table to catch my breath and felt my heart pounding. I rummaged through my bag for a cell phone to call his father, and then I saw an envelope on the table. On the front side, my name was printed. I took it and opened it. There was one piece of paper and David's wedding ring. Crap, he knows. I unfolded the piece of paper and read it. "Diana, now you can consider me dead. Our marriage is obviously dead, by all indications, for a long time, and that's why I left. I took everything I wanted. The rest is all yours, and you can do whatever you want with it. I have notified the apartment management company that I no longer live here, so you can decide whether to stay here or move is your choice. Don't look for me. I'm on the road. I need a break from work, life, and your betrayal with Darren's Ranger. It is clear to me that you are no longer interested in marrying me. Enjoy your life, and I wish you all the best. David." One last thing, my lawyer will contact you shortly with some information that you may or may not use. The choice is yours. Oh shit, what should I do now? I never thought David would find out about Darren. What happened with Darren's wasn't even something serious. It was just fun. David works hard, and even when we do manage to spend time together, many things seem to get in the way of our intimacy. To be honest, I felt lonely without male attention. I knew that David would slow down at work, and when we had a predictable schedule, we would pull ourselves together and be like all other married couples. I thought that over time, we would have a couple of children, buy a house, and become a normal family. This plan went to hell. Darren is a very charming guy, and I found it easy to get attached to him. The more I thought about being with him, the easier it was to think that it wouldn't interfere with my marriage. I tried to call David's cell phone, but found out that his number was no longer in service. I called his mother and father and went there. His father refused to talk to me, saying only that David had left and that I could go to hell. I looked around the apartment again and saw that most of David's things were gone. The furniture was there, but I noticed that his closet was empty. Some of the books on the shelf in the spare bedroom were missing, and there were a couple of black trash bags in the kitchen. When I opened them, I saw that they were David's things that he had clearly decided he didn't need. I had no idea what to do. I sat at the table, and it seemed to me that my life had evaporated before my eyes. I screwed up big time. I decided that tomorrow I would go to his family and try to sort out the mess I had gotten myself into. I tried calling a few of his friends, but got nowhere. All they could tell me was that they thought he was busy at the hospital and that they had not seen him for several weeks. No one answered at his brother's house, and I didn't have their mobile phone numbers. I went to the refrigerator, found half a bottle of wine, and poured it into a glass. I sat at the table, looked at the note and my husband's wedding ring, thought about why I was so stupid, and tried to figure out how to fix everything. Whatever this correction may be, it will not be possible without pain on my part. I screwed up big time. That first night, I didn't go very far. It was almost 10 p.m. when I saw my wife run out of the Hilton Hotel and get into a taxi. She thought I was at work in the ambulance and would be there until tomorrow. She decided that she would have enough time to spend it with her boyfriend and then go home and get herself in order. I pressed the starter on the motorcycle and it immediately came to life. Africa Twin Istet. This means it has a programmable 6-speed automatic transmission. This also means that on long trips, driver fatigue is much less. The bike is a 1000cc beast. It can go for days at high speed and carry me and all my gear. I don't have a death wish, so I'm always very careful when driving, looking at everything around me and anticipating what the cars and trucks will do. Situation awareness is indeed very important for safe driving. I have seen many children admitted to the emergency room who were driving too fast on the rockets and were not good racers at all to begin with. This usually leads to disaster. I've seen children die because of stupid things on a motorcycle and many others left permanently crippled. Not the most pleasant ending. Now, there were only a few minutes left to our destination. It was east of the river at the Holiday Inn Express, just off the highway. I was physically and mentally exhausted. I wanted to eat, take a hot shower, and get a good night's sleep. I was checked in and realized that one hotel was where my marriage ended. Now I am in another hotel where my new adventure begins. How appropriate. How ironic. I left the apartment early, drove to David's parents' house, and rang the doorbell. I noticed David's car was parked in front of the garage, so maybe he was here. Miriam, his mother, came to the door and, opening it and seeing that it was me, closed it right in front of my nose. I pressed the doorbell button again and waited. I kept pressing the button until a few minutes later the door opened, and this time it was John, David's father. He was emotionless, to say the least. "What the hell do you want?" "Please, John, I need to talk to David. Please, I have to see him. Ask him to leave." John frowned. "You are late. He left Albany last night. I don't know where he is, and frankly, if I did, I wouldn't tell you. John, I need to talk to him and explain everything. If he just listens to me, I know we can work through this." "What the heck? You're having a long-term affair with another man, and you're expecting your husband to just say, 'Oh, don't worry, honey, everything's fine.' As if he would do just that. Get your traitorous ass off my doorstep, and we don't want you here anymore." With these words, he slammed the door. I sat on the step for several minutes, trying to figure out what to do. I rang the doorbell again. I kept calling until John answered. Before he could say anything, I said, "Please, give him a message from me. Tell him I'm desperate to talk to him. Just ask him to call me. Please." I turned and walked back to my car and sat there for a few minutes, hoping John would tell me how to contact David, or if he was in the house, he might come out, but he didn't. He closed the door, and that was it. Nothing else. I returned to the apartment and found a letter taped to the door. It was a letter from David's lawyer, Leanne Collins, informing me that I had been removed from David's health insurance and that all financial assets had been divided equally and David's share had been removed from all bank accounts. In addition, changes were made to the life insurance policies, according to which his parents are now the beneficiaries. The letter went on to state that David Walters wishes to have no further or future contact with Diana Walters, and therefore any correspondence that Diana Walters may wish to send to David Walters must be in writing and directed to his attorney. Any correspondence will be retained until David Walters indicates that he wishes to receive it. The letter further stated that, under New York State family law, Diana Walters has the right to file a claim for dissolution of marriage based on abandonment after the expiration of 1 year, which will be 365 days after that date. If Diana Walters wishes to file a claim for dissolution of marriage at any time, please ask her representative to contact Leanne Collins. Any necessary motions or statements on behalf of David Walters will be filed at that time. All the best. So, it became clear that my husband was practically done with me. We were together for almost 8 years, married for almost 4 of them, and this was the end. I had already shit my own bed pretty hard, and now I had to lie down in it. I spent the whole weekend trying to reach David's brother, his friends, and his colleagues at the hospital. I even went to the hospital to try to find someone there who had any idea where David might be. I met an R nurse there. Her name is Rhonda. She told me that she couldn't talk to me right now because they were very busy, but I could come to her house the next day and we could talk. I thanked her and left. The next day, I went to the address she gave me, and she actually let me into the house to talk. She offered me a drink. I asked for ice water. I needed a clear head. She told me that she shared with David that she saw me in a restaurant with Darren's. She said he was interested to know more about it, Darren. Rhonda said she told him everything she knew about him, which wasn't much, but he was married, had a family, and his company did landscaping in her backyard. Other than that, there wasn't much to tell. She looked at me with a mixture of amazement and pity. I'm sure she thought I was a stupid idiot and ruined my marriage to a married man, no less. While we were talking, her children ran to the kitchen and back. She kept shouting commands to them and returning her attention to me. After asking a few questions, I thanked her for her time and stood up to leave. As I walked out the front door, she mentioned that it was widely known at the hospital that David would not be returning to work for some time. She looked after me as I got into the car and drove away. A month later, I realized that Newfoundland is a wonderful province. There are majestic landscapes and very nice people. I stayed on the island for over a week, traveled many back roads, and thoroughly enjoyed the scenery, people, and food. When I got to the Avalon Peninsula, I had a close encounter with a moose who decided to come out onto the road to see who I was. I managed to avoid the giant and stopped to watch him for a few minutes while he decided that the road was not the best place for him. It was good for him and for everyone unlucky a motorist who might hit him. I had been warned that there were a lot of moose along the highway, so I only traveled during the day. In a place called Petty Harbor, I was eating ice cream after visiting the easternmost part of North America, Cape Spear, and when I got a flat tire on my motorcycle, 4 different people offered to help. You won't find that in Albany. I called the auto club, in Canada, and they sent a truck to load the bike on it and take me to the repair shop. The repair shop was located in St. John's, a fairly large city with a good selection of places to stay and excellent restaurants. I rented a room in a small hotel in the city center and went for a walk around the city while my motorcycle was being repaired and tuned. It was a good place to spend a few days away from riding, do some laundry, and recuperate. The hotel room was clean and comfortable and even had a small bar and restaurant. I stopped by the motorcycle repair shop again to have them do a modification for me, and while I was there, I happened to meet a woman who was also traveling around the country on a motorcycle. She was from Germany and was heading to Morocco. She had passed through Canada and was now heading to Africa to begin her journey around the continent. She was preparing her motorcycle to be shipped from St. John's in a shipping container. She was supposed to fly to Casablanca via Lisbon and pick up the bike as soon as it arrived. The ship was supposed to deliver the motorcycle to Morocco in about a week. Her name was Emma Fisher. She was from Berlin and worked for a travel company. She was dressed in her travel gear, and while it wasn't the most appropriate outfit, I knew right away that she was gorgeous. I thought she was about 35 years old, and she was about the same height as me. My height is 183 cm when I'm barefoot. She looks like that British actress from the Mission Impossible movies, but with a sexy German accent. After another conversation about motorcycle travel and some of the things she had encountered on her trip to Canada, I asked when she was leaving, and it turned out that it was only in 3 days. Then I invited her to dinner. She said yes. We lived in hotels located quite close to each other, so we agreed to meet at a restaurant called Salted Cod. So what if an establishment with that name is located in Newfoundland? We ate, drank, got to know each other, and the next morning, I woke up with her. I felt good for the first time in a long time. We spent the whole next day together, talking a lot about travel and how exciting it is to travel around the world on a motorcycle. Her smile, voice, and eyes attracted me. I was immediately drawn to her. After I shared my story with her, and she shared hers, we talked about what we each had planned for the next few months. My plan, of course, was to travel all over North America. She had already traveled almost 40,000 kilometers and planned to travel another 20,000 before returning home to Germany. Her plan was to make a loop along the coast of Africa. I thought this could be a much more interesting trip than the one I had planned. Throughout the next day, as I spent time with Emma, I mulled over the pros and cons of changing my plan in my head. I even called my dad and talked to him to let him know that I was thinking about going to Africa. I figured he might think I was having a mental breakdown if I just texted him and my mom saying I was going to Africa and would see them later. We talked for almost an hour. At the end of the conversation, both he and my mother said that I should do what I want. It was my life, and I had to make my own decisions about which way it would go. When I was a child, my dad told me that fathers are where their children's dreams die. I didn't understand this until I grew up, and then I always considered it a humorous, but, unfortunately, realistic phrase that my father said to me and my brother. Yes, I have a brother. He is 2 years older than me and is married with 3 children. He works with his father in a construction company. Paul loves to build. He works very hard for his family, and his wife shows him respect for his hard work. Marcy quit her job to raise her kids at home, and let me tell you, I think it paid off for them. She is a wonderful mother, and my parents love her to death. Their children are spoiled by their grandparents. But I digress. Let's get back to my plan. The next evening, I asked Emma if she would like some company on her trip to Africa. I didn't know if she had a boyfriend or husband or significant other that she was going to meet, but I took a little risk and asked anyway. He who dares wins. She looked at me with a smile and asked, "Are you saying that you want to go to Africa?" He said directly. "Yes, I want to." "What happened to your plan to travel around North America?" "Well, you've opened my eyes a little, and I think Africa might be a more interesting place to visit. It's a little out of my comfort zone, but I think I need to challenge myself and see what happens. Maybe everything will work out for me, or maybe everything will be terrible. I do not know now, but I think I'd like to find out. I'm still too close to Albany. I need a little more distance from my old life." You immediately had a problem. "Your motorcycle is here and should go to Africa." I quickly called the motorcycle store and asked if there was still room in the shipping container for another motorcycle. The store owner called me back an hour later and said that if I could come there now and sign some paperwork, he could have my bike ready to ship the next morning. The logistics of shipping a motorcycle are quite simple, but all you need is enough money. 2 days later, I boarded a flight with Emma from St. John's to Toronto. From there, we flew to Paris, and then, after a short wait, to Lisbon and Casablanca. When David started talking about joining me on the African leg of my trip, I decided I needed to find out more about him before agreeing. I made a couple of calls to a friend from the office where I work from home in Berlin. Her husband works for the German police, and she asked if he could quickly check on David Walters of Albany, New York, and confirm that what he told me about himself was true. My girlfriend called back very quickly and told me that he, as they say, is real. He was working as an emergency room physician at Albany General Hospital and was on sabbatical for 3 months, with a possible extension of up to 6 months. He comes from a prominent Albany family and is currently separated from his wife of nearly 4 years. It appears that she was having an affair with a married man. He graduated from medical college with the best results and has no children. It's amazing what the police can dig up without much effort. I even received a photo of him to confirm that he was indeed the David Walters I was asking about. It was him, okay? With this information, I happily went on a journey with David. The fact that he was a doctor was nice to know if we had an accident and needed medical attention, but at the same time I understood that he must be suffering very much due to his wife's infidelity to leave for such a long time. Term and travel alone. I have had a long-term male partner, and I can tell you that being deceived by your partner is not something you can endure for long. I ended my relationship by throwing all his things over the balcony of our apartment. He received the message. I can say that traveling independently is completely different. You can go wherever you want, whenever you want. But it can be lonely. I have been on this journey for several months now and have traveled more than 30,000 kilometers. I'm planning to write a book about motorcycle travel from the perspective of a woman traveling alone. I photographed and videotaped every part of this trip, as well as keeping a detailed written journal, and it will likely take me several months to edit it all into something sellable. I may be interested in doing all this myself, but it must be interesting enough for others to pay money to read about my adventures. I have a friend back home who is trying to convince me to post some of my videos online, maybe on YouTube or other social media. David has a lot to learn about hardcore, long-distance motorcycle travel, and the first challenge is equipping him with better gear than he already has. I called one of the motorcycle dealerships in Casablanca, and they have almost everything he needs, and they know of other shops and outfitters in the area that can provide more of the things he will need. This should be a fun trip with Dr. David. I hope I can be a good guide. David's mother and father made it clear that they wanted nothing more to do with me. They refused to talk to me and have refused to tell me where David is. I don't know what to do with my marriage. It's becoming obvious that it's over between me and David, so what should I do? He hasn't started getting a divorce yet, and I'm not sure if I want to be the one to file for divorce first. What if he comes back and changes his mind and wants to try to repair our marriage? What will I do if he gives me another chance? What will I do then? Will he be able to trust me again? I've been very lonely since Darren told me we couldn't see each other anymore. His wife became suspicious, and he was afraid that she might hire an investigator to get evidence of his cheating with me, which she could use to punish him in her divorce. So that was it. Plus, he was afraid that David might tell his wife that he was cheating with me. My social life is very modest, almost to the point of non-existence. But I can't do this anymore. I need to go out. I need to see people and communicate. People at work often meet on Fridays after work. I'm going to start walking with them. The walls of the apartment are starting to crowd me in. I really need a change of scenery. Casablanca is an amazing place. Casablanca is the main port of Morocco, on the North African coast of the Atlantic Ocean. The city is home to around 4 million people and is an interesting mix of very old and very new and modern. I got us an inexpensive hotel room where we could stay while we waited for the ship to arrive with our motorcycles. Emma took me to a few places to buy the necessary gear I would need, and we played tourists, walking around the city, eating food and learning about the history and culture. We learned that the ship was delayed 2 days due to rough weather in the Atlantic, so we stayed in Casablanca for 8 nights. Some of these nights were the best of my life. The others weren't far behind. Almost 2 months and not a single word from David. I have to start figuring out what to do. It looks like he's seriously decided to get rid of me. What did I do that was so bad? After all, he was never there for me. This damn hospital was the only thing he cared about. I am only one, and he should have been there to take care of my needs too. I love him, but with his schedule and my schedule, we spent very little time together. I have needs too. Darren actually came to the bank yesterday to see me. He thinks his wife no longer suspects what he does when he's not in the office, so we can start dating again. When I told him that my husband had left me, his only response was that we could save on hotel bills by using my apartment. I need a man to show up urgently, otherwise I'll go crazy. I was hoping it would be David, but without him, Darren might be there. I can't believe the beauty of Morocco. I also can't believe Emma's beauty. The more I learn about her, the more I like her. Not only is she physically beautiful, she's very smart, resourceful, rides a motorcycle very well, has a ton of common sense, and isn't afraid to use it. She taught me a lot about true adventure riding. She shared that she had a long-term boyfriend, known at home as her common-law husband, and had no children. Her boyfriend decided that he wanted to live with another woman, and in a very polite manner announced that their relationship was over. She threw his shit over the railing of the apartment balcony and moved on with her life. In Casablanca, I acquired a bunch of new equipment that I need to survive in these conditions. I now have a supply of gasoline and oil for my motorcycle, lots of water for me, tools for repairs such as fixing a flat tire or broken chain. My bike has metal skids attached to the bottom of the engine, and I have optional LED running lights. I also have a battery and charging cables since none of our bikes have a Kickstarter. I have a new GPS system that even detects off-road routes and connects via satellites rather than cell phone signals. I have the best riding gear, a sleeping bag, and an inflatable mat that we will sleep on in the areas where we camp, away from towns and villages. I also have a small gas stove for heating water and food. I can even make coffee. This is a basic necessity. We plan to stay in small beds and breakfasts as often as possible and eat local food. This turned out to be interesting when we arrived in Morocco. My North American gut was not ready for the dietary change, and for the first few days, I had to be near the toilet. Emma found this very funny since she was used to eating from a variety of places. I bought some tablets to help with my bowel problems. My medical school training kicked in, and I remembered that dehydration is not your friend. I drank more water, and everything was fine. I received a letter from my lawyer saying that nothing was happening to Diana. She was silent and did not try to send me anything. I guess she realized it was over between us or was trying to figure out what her options were and what she was going to do. I didn't really care what she did. I only knew that what I was doing now was what I wanted. I didn't need a wife who wanted to spend her time with some other man. Hell, if she wanted another guy, why not just tell me and we could go our separate ways? But no, she couldn't be honest with me. She was supposed to be messing around with the landscaping guy. She had to pretend that she still cared about me. What nonsense that was. After leaving Casablanca, we drove south towards Marrakech. It's about 250 km along the main A3 highway, but we decided to take a roundabout route through the port town of El Jadida. It was a warm day, but the ride was great, and we enjoyed the back road to get there. The city of El Jadida was very beautiful. We spent one night there and then went to El Badusa, a town on the coast. Because it is so close to the water, the temperature was a little cooler than on land, so I was able to acclimatize to the terrain. Emma had never been here, so for both of us, it was really time to discover this region. Emma speaks several languages: German, English, French, Spanish, and some Arabic. She had the opportunity to use them all in the short time we were in North Africa. God, I love her German accent. The journey from Casablanca to Marrakech took us 5 days and more than 1,300 km. It was, without a doubt, the best trip of my life. Safi and Essaouira were on our itinerary, and then we headed east, inland to the big city. Marrakech is a city with a population of about 1 million people. This is an amazing place, again a combination of old and new. Since none of us had been there, I convinced Emma that we should stay for 3 days and play tourists. That's what we did. I managed to find an inexpensive hotel in the city that had secure parking for our motorcycles. I didn't want them to be stripped of everything or stolen. We checked the bikes every day and everything was fine. Emma drove a BMW F800 GS, and it was equipped with everything BMW can think of to make long-distance driving easier. Maybe I'll come up with some of that later, but for now, Africa Twin is doing a great job here in Africa. More than 2 months have passed, and there is no news from David or anyone he knows. I tried to talk to his family several more times, but every time the door slammed shut in front of my nose. I called his lawyer, but she only asked me if I was starting divorce proceedings or if I had a letter that I wanted him to receive at some point. I didn't write a letter. What the hell was I supposed to say? I wasn't planning on getting a divorce yet. I still wanted to talk to David and see if he was okay with staying married to me. At the end of the day, he is a great husband, and I know he will be a great father when we have children. If we have children. Now it looks like this won't happen. I've had several different guys on one-night stands. Does this make me a bad person? I think so, but maybe not. After all, my husband left me and went to God knows where. No call, no text, no email to say what he was doing and when if he would be back. It would be great to hear from him. Africa is so different from everything I grew up with. The culture, the language, the area, the food, the weather, everything. But at the same time, it looks amazingly like home. The people here are almost the same. People want to take care of their families and homes. They want to make sure they can put food on the table and have a roof over their head. Just basic survival. Parents want a better life for their children. They want peace and security. Not every country on this continent has a stable government whose goal is the welfare of the people. Morocco, the situation is better than in many other countries. Traveling with Emma opened my eyes. She is a real woman with an extraordinary sense of adventure. She is clearly unhappy unless she is challenged in some way. I was challenged to let go of my own fears of different things, places, and environments. I grew up in fairly safe New York State, in a very stable family with a mother, father, and brother. I went to a good school and came home to a comfortable and safe home. Not every family in the world can boast of such luxury. The only thing I realized after my holiday is that people all over the world depend on their families and friends and are proud of the place where they live, no matter how humble it may be. Africa is an experience. Travel is an experience. My eyes open in ways I never imagined, and I am experiencing this together with a wonderful woman. Emma is a wonderful companion and lover. She is passionate, caring, wild, and loves to live on the edge. This doesn't mean she's stupid, quite the opposite. She has a lot of common sense and is not afraid to use it. The thirst for Emma and travel, the thirst for this new way of life. I don't think I can go back to the lifestyle I lived in Albany. I really enjoy being with Dr. David on this trip to Africa. It's so nice to be around him. He is constantly amazed at the difference in things and life in Africa compared to his upbringing in the US. He worked so hard to do the right things throughout his life. University, medical school, his family and wife. And all this led to him being disappointed in the only person who he thought would always be with him. He thought that his wife would be there to support him in his profession and the choices they made together. But somewhere she lost her way. I don't know her, and it's not my job to take her husband away from her, but she appears to have done a good job of throwing him away all by herself. We've only been together a few weeks, and I can tell that if things continue like this, it will be hard for me to leave when he has to go back to work at the hospital. I have a plan for myself that I made before my adventure began, and I must carry it through to the end. I made a commitment to a publishing house back home to write a guidebook for women who want to see the world on a motorcycle. I doubt I'll make much money from it, but I enjoy it. I like doing this, and I think I'm good at it. We are on our way from Marrakech to Laayoune. It is about 900 km, and we are driving mainly along the coastal route. In long stretches, there is almost nothing, just dust and wide open spaces. The beauty is breathtaking and awe-inspiring at the same time. A youngster like me must respect the environment and pay attention to what is happening around us. My American passport is not a free pass for much here. A passport issued by an EU member state is well recognized here. Border guards often wonder why an American is in such a place and even rides around on a motorcycle and gets dirty. One customs officer asked me why I left America and came here. I smiled and pointed at Emma. He laughed, nodding his head. He knows why men do this. On the way to Laayoune, we stopped for 2 nights. We made sure that we were far from the road and would not become an easy target for thieves at night. I have to say that the first night, I barely slept. Every noise kept me awake and alert. On the second night, fatigue set in and I began to sleep more. In the morning, after some ablutions were performed and coffee was brewed on the burner, I felt much better. Gasoline for motorcycles, water and food were our priorities, so we never passed by a place where we could refuel and buy food. We always paid in cash and never left more than the cost of gas and groceries. It's better not to make yourself a target. I'm not saying that West Africa is a dangerous place, any more dangerous than some parts of the US, but it never hurts to be aware of your surroundings and understand that 2 people on expensive motorcycles must have some kind of money on them, so they immediately become a target for a thief who wants to make easy money. My gear protects me from falls, but it can't handle a gun or a knife. I know full well the damage a small pistol can do. I've seen this too many times, in the or at home. Great fun. The drive south, through Western Sahara and Mauritania, was unlike anything I had ever seen or experienced in my life. The landscape was, like on the moon. It was dry, dusty, harsh, and beautiful at the same time. While we were driving, we were able to talk to each other via our Bluetooth helmets. Emma constantly told me about the region, as if she had lived here for many years. She was the editor of a travel magazine and got to know the area very well before leaving home. For me, all of this was amazing. I loved it, but at the same time, I was scared to death. Scary because it was so foreign to my white American upbringing. Did I mention that Emma talked non-stop? Her voice was mesmerizing. I could listen to this woman reading the Berlin telephone directory. Our goal, after leaving Lyon, was to get to Dakar in Senegal. It was more than 1,800 kilometers. This meant 4 days of pretty intense riding. I managed to increase the distance, but now the challenge was to ride a good distance in hot and dusty conditions. Dust is everywhere. Emma reminds me to drink water about 10 times a day. I have a camelback that holds 4 liters of water, and I empty it every day, plus more when we finish. I've had to stop on the side of the road to empty my bladder a few times, but I find it funny when Emma has to do the same. I could tell you about the trip through Western Sahara and Mauritania, but that would be repeating the same thing 4 times. Lots of wide open spaces with absolutely nothing in them. I already said that we never drove past a place where we could buy gasoline. We both carried an extra 10 liters of fuel on our motorcycles, and we had to use them a couple of times. My bike has a slightly larger engine and therefore uses a little more gas than Emma's BMW. I'm going to buy an extra gas tank to attach to my motorcycle. We had a breakdown and had to repair it on the side of the road. It cost us about 3 hours, but that's the price you pay. We spent 3 nights in a tent, and it's amazing how intimate you can be with a woman when you didn't have a chance to shower beforehand. The smell of the human body when it's been hot and sweaty all day is something I'm used to. We washed ourselves a little water and soap on a washcloth to lather all the necessary parts of the body, and we used a cup of water each to brush our teeth. Cleanliness is more important. Well, you get the idea. We crossed the Senegalese border at Diam. The crossing to Rosso is much more difficult, and in order to get to the other side of the river, you need to pay money to almost everyone who, to one degree or another, controls this crossing. We heard from other motorcyclists that there is a bridge in Daima, and crossing it is less expensive. Not too far from the bridge is the city of St. Louis. This is not the St. Louis you are most likely familiar with. It's very different. I knew from some research we had done beforehand that the city was divided into different parts, some of which were on islands. When we arrived in the city, it looked like something I had only seen in movies. Poverty was staggering. However, after driving over the bridge, we saw another part of the city in which there was clearly money. We found a good and inexpensive hotel, Hotel de la Poste, parked the motorcycles, and cleaned up. The hotel was located next to a large government building, so there was always a police presence nearby. This meant that there was much less crime in the area. Good for us. I told Emma that I needed some rest after crossing the desert. She laughed with her infectious smile and agreed that we could both use a little sleep in a decent bed. We spent the next 2 days in this bed. At times, sleep took very little time. We went for food and swam in the hotel pool several times. The hotel even offered laundry services, so we got our clothes in order. I know what you're thinking. A rich guy from the USA can buy whatever he wants in Africa. Most of the large houses in this part of St. Louis were owned by Senegalese, not Westerners. So, park your outrage. Also, things in this part of the world are a little cheaper than in the US. $50 a night for a nice hotel room that would cost $200 in the States is not unusual. Usually, I check my email when I have a good Wi-Fi connection. I wanted to see if my family had sent me anything, and if my lawyer had anything she would like to give me. Mostly it was Mom and Dad asking where I was, if I was okay, and if I was having a good time. This time, my lawyer told me the latest news. It turned out that Diana had written a letter asking about my whereabouts and when I would return to Albany. I asked my parents not to report my whereabouts, and my lawyer was under strict orders to do the same. She told me that Diana had not yet started any divorce proceedings. I figured she would file for divorce soon. After all, she was the one who needed sex outside of marriage, and she had already cheated for years with my boyfriend. 2 years, what I was doing now was none of her business. As far as I knew, everything was over between us. We're done. I planned that if Diana didn't file for divorce before I got home from my trip, I would. I wanted to move on with my life. Right now, I am having the best time of my life. Emma is a wonderful woman. I don't know what the future holds for us. She has plans, and they don't necessarily include me. But it's normal. Our meeting in Canada happened completely by chance. But nevertheless, this is a wonderful accident. After a wonderful 2 days at the hotel in St. Louis, we had to hit the road again. Our goal was Dakar, which was only 300 kilometers away. As we left the city, our plans quickly changed. Already ahead, I saw that a big problem had arisen. Right in front of us, a bus overturned on the road. It appears that a scooter with a family of 5 on it, a propane tank hanging on its side, hit a huge pothole and overturned in front of the bus. The bus turned sharply, but as it did so, the driver hit the truck and it flipped onto its side. After a moment of shock, we pulled the motorcycles to the side of the road and took off our helmets. David ran to the front of the bus and began looking for the family on the scooter. What he discovered was terrifying for most of us. The family was thrown from the scooter, and the father was pinned under the wreckage of the bus. All the children were wounded, and the mother lay unconscious on the ground. The propane tank was pinned underneath her as she and the tank appeared to have flipped over several times. David quickly began working on his mother as she appeared to have the most injuries. David started yelling at me to help the kids, and then at a few other people he yelled at me to go see if the father was alive or dead. I took our first aid kits off the bike and handed them to David. He was very calm and focused as he worked on the mother and her children. Dad was barely moving, and we could see that he would need much more than we could give him to get him out from under the wing of the bus. The police finally showed up, but they did little except direct traffic. David shouted at them to call an ambulance, but they looked at him as if he had 2 heads. Ambulance, here? Fortunately, there were only a few people on the bus, and they slowly got out, with wounds. The bus driver had a large wound and needed several stitches. The police finally began to act, and, using an iron rod, tried to lift the bus a little so that the father could be pulled out. When he was pulled out, he was in bad condition. David was busy with him and kept asking if an ambulance was on the way. Finally, 2 ambulances appeared, and the mother and father, along with their 3 children, were loaded into the car and taken to the hospital. David and I sat on the side of the road and drank water. David examined the wounds of the people on the bus. One of the police cars took the bus driver, possibly to the hospital. We didn't know for sure, it's not our problem. One of the policemen, with a lot of ranks under his belt, came up to talk to David. He spoke pretty good English. He asked David a few questions, with a lot of hand gestures and nods. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I soon found out. The policeman wanted to know why David was providing first aid to the victims. When David explained that he was a doctor, the officer walked away and spoke on his cell phone. There were many more head nods, and then he returned to David and asked if he could follow him. The hospital asked David to stop there and tell them a little about the family's injuries on the scooter. It seemed like the hospital didn't have a doctor at the moment, and the best they had were a few nurses who were very busy right now. We got on our motorcycles and followed the police car to the hospital. This, of course, was not the hospital that I was used to seeing in Europe, but it was not terrible either. The building was old and in need of updating, but it looked clean enough and there was no trash in the hallways. The nurse David was talking to was waving her hands and telling him that they didn't have the capacity to take additional patients. David looked around and found what he needed to stitch up some wounds on the kids, and then he asked me to help him. I had no idea what to do, but he was very good at explaining to me what I needed to do to help him. Stitching is very easy. The hardest part is getting the curved needle through the skin. Once you do this a few times, it won't be difficult. I helped David for what seemed like a long time, but I know it only lasted a couple of hours. It's amazing what can be done when needed. David was great. I couldn't believe what he did. I almost forgot he was a doctor until he ran up to the scene of the accident and started shouting instructions to people. When there is danger, most people run away from it. David ran towards him. My God, we spent 3 more days in St. Louis. David spent most of this time in the hospital, where he observed several patients, both after the scooter and bus accident, and many others who were brought to the hospital. I learned from a nurse that rumors spread quickly that there is a doctor who sees patients. This meant that many of those who could not get to a doctor could simply get the opportunity to draw attention to their problem. This man worked for more than 30 hours without a break. I returned to the hotel to get some rest and get myself in order. David needed 1 more night to rest and get ready for the trip. When we left the city, it was sad because we knew that now the people there did not have a permanent doctor whose help they could count on. Returning along the road to the south brought completely new adventures. Our planned stop was Dakar. I read a little about it on Wikipedia and really wanted to see the city. Dakar is the capital of the Republic of Senegal and is home to approximately 4 million people. I was amazed by the contrasts of the city. There was a lot of obvious wealth in the city, but there were also areas of widespread poverty. It seemed strange to see expensive Mercedes-Benz and shabby scooters in the same stream of cars, but they seemed to coexist without much open hostility. People did what they did to survive. Families had to be fed and housed, and people had to go to work to do this. Such was life. It was no different from other places I had seen since leaving Albany, but now my eyes were open. Perhaps I had Diana to thank for that. Perhaps her inability to be faithful was the push that allowed me to see a whole new world, one that was previously alien to me, one with whom I can communicate better every day. With Emma as my guide and partner, I insisted that we rent a hotel on the beach. Until now, we divided the costs of the hotels and lodging houses in which we stayed. But I knew that Emma's financial resources were limited, or at least that was the impression I got from our conversations. So I told her I needed a break after my experience in St. Louis. I had the money, and at that moment, I wasn't worried about the cost. So we stayed for 3 days, played with tourists, and spent some time on the beach. It was wonderful. Emma told me that traveling with me made her very happy. I told her that she was quietly saving my life, giving me a new life. But then reality intervened. I checked my email and received this. From Chief Administrator, Albany General Hospital. For Dr. David Walters. David, we hope that you have enjoyed your time off from hospital duties and that you are rested and ready to return to work. Our contract was concluded for 3 months, with the possibility of extension up to 6 months, but only by mutual agreement between us and you. Unfortunately, I have to inform you that you must return here as soon as possible, but no later than the 1st of next month. Your coworker is sick, and the emergency department needs you to return to work. I'll be able to cover the doctor shortage within a few weeks, but suffice it to say, we need you back here as soon as possible. Let me know if you have any problems, and I will do my best to help. Call me when you receive this, please. David, I'm sorry to interrupt your plans, but we really need you. So wherever you are, please get your ass home. Laura. Dr. Laura Johnson, Chief Administrator. Damn it. All good things must come to an end, and this adventure was yet another casualty of reality rearing its ugly head and biting me in the ass. I decided that I could ignore the letter for a few days and continue with the trip. That's what I did. The road to the south was very difficult and, frankly speaking, much more dangerous, especially since David shared that he was told to return to the US and return to his job at the hospital. We talked about me going home to Germany when he had to go home. I then suggested driving a little south into Namibia and driving from Windhoek to Cape Town. We contacted a motorcycle shop in Dakar, which had contacts for sending our motorcycles by plane, and agreed that in 2 days they would be loaded onto a cargo truck airplane. That's what we did. The flight to Windhoek was memorable because the plane was old and the pilot and co-pilot looked like they were nothing more than teenagers. The weather during the flight was very windy. We were excited to land on the ground at Windhoek Airport and see our bikes. We sorted out our equipment, paid our curators to make sure nothing was accidentally lost, and hit the road. The journey south to Cape Town took only 5 days. We both knew that the end of our time together was approaching quickly, and so we tried to make the best of it. I didn't want to part with my hero, but I had to get back to work. I needed to start writing a book and edit hundreds of hours of video. The publisher was eager to see some progress, and the money they had given me was running out. I needed to go home and take care of business there. David arranged flights for both of us to Frankfurt, and we parted ways there. He'll fly to New York's Kennedy Airport, and I'll take the train to Berlin. There is a direct train from the airport to Berlin, which takes about 5 hours. David planned to take the subway from Kennedy Airport into the city, and then take the train from Penn Station to Albany. He got to the hotel by taxi. On our last night, we dropped off our bikes at the shop. Mine is for storage, and David's is for shipping back to the USA. It was a sad day for me, and I could tell David didn't want to come home. At Frankfurt Airport, we were very quiet. I looked at him, and he looked so sad. His eyes spoke for themselves. I kissed him and told him he needed to catch the next flight. He kissed me back and whispered in my ear that he loved me. Then I realized that this was not the last time I would see this wonderful man. Albany, New York. Dave, Dave. It was my brother Paul shouting at me. I stood in the hotel lobby and looked around to see where he was. This was my second day back in the US after leaving Africa. Never mind, brother. You look fine. Where the hell have you been? Outside the country. Hey, how did you know I'm here? I did not know. In a few minutes, I have a meeting with a client here. Dad and Mom said that you are taking a break from work and your wife. They never shared with me or Marcy where you went. What's going on with Diana? It's a long story. So, you will come to me for dinner today and tell me what is happening and what you have been doing. I didn't argue with him. I guess it was time to return to life here at home. Okay, thank you. Good home-cooked food would be great. We chatted some more, and then I told him that I needed to go to the hospital to see my boss. Paul took out his cell phone, and I'm sure he called Marcy to tell her I was coming over for dinner. Next on his list will be Mom and Dad. I didn't ask him not to call Diana, but I was sure that he wouldn't do it. It was a short walk from the hotel, and it was a beautiful morning. It's strange, but on the way to the hospital, I passed by the building where Diana works. The hospital administrator, Dr. Johnson, was glad to see me and even said that she had received a strange letter from the Senegalese government through the US State Department, thanking me for the services provided by the American doctor who came to St. Louis. She was really curious about what it was all about, so I told her the story about the family on the scooter. Father, mother, 3 children, and a propane tank. It all seemed very strange to her. I think the letter was their way of expressing gratitude for my help in the hospital. The director briefed me on what was happening and then put me on the schedule. I was supposed to start work tomorrow and work 12-hour days for the next 6 days. Great. Those 12-hour shifts easily turn into 18-hour shifts when there's a big traffic accident or something stupid. Tonight, I was going to visit my brother and his wife, eat all the food they put in front of me, play with their 3 kids, and maybe even have a beer or 3. I knew there would be a lot of questions. I was ready. Marcy hugged me tightly as I walked through the front door and grabbed my coat. David, how are you? We all missed you. Well, I'm fine, thank you for asking. The children, after I gave them the small gifts I had brought, went to play in the family room. Now let's get down to serious business. Marcy went straight to her main question. What the hell happened between you and Diana? Why did you leave? Gee, Marcy, good to see you too. I wouldn't say no to beer if you have it in your fridge. Paul looked at Marcy, as if to say, I told you so. He went to the kitchen and returned with 3 bottles of beer. I took a sip from the bottle under the gaze of my sister-in-law and brother. I began. So, I guess you want to know what's going on with me? What did Mom and Dad tell you? Marcy looked at me with some contempt for not answering. They didn't say anything. I even tried to talk to Diana, but she didn't say anything. She wanted information from me, and of course I had nothing. All we knew was that you took a break from work and went somewhere alone. So what the hell is going on? She put a fine point on this issue. I spent the next half hour giving them the Reader's Digest version of the last 5 months. I even went into some of the finer details of what I knew Diana was doing. I spared them the grisly details of the investigator's report that revealed the extent of her infidelity. I left out a lot of details that they really didn't need to know. Besides, now that her affair is exposed, they don't care as much about it. Doesn't matter. We had dinner, drank more beer, and there were many questions about what I did on the road, and especially in Africa. I've shared a few stories about my travels. I told them about Emma. I also told them that she was back in Berlin working, and I was now back in Albany working. So, our life will go on. After dinner, I told them that I was going to look for a place to live for the time being until I had a chance to sort out my divorce and figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Traveling with Emma opened my eyes to life, and I really didn't think I could go back to living in a hospital and pretending to be happy. Returning to Albany reminded me of the crash of my marriage and how I failed as a husband, about how easily Diana left me for any available guy. I didn't tell Paul or Marcy this, but thinking about Diana made me feel like a real idiot. She pulled the wool over my eyes so easily and for a long time. I decided to never let this happen again. This was one of the many conclusions I came to while riding my motorcycle in Africa. Another takeaway was that there are a lot of good women out there. Women with morals and integrity. Women who will be honest with you, and if you don't suit them, will tell you so. They'll talk to you, and they won't just change you behind your back. If Diana didn't want to be married to me, why didn't she just say so, and we could get a divorce and move on with our lives? But no, she had to hide what she wanted. She had to lie to me. I returned to the hotel and had a good night's sleep. Tomorrow, I will look for housing. I got a message from the people I work with that David is back in town. They knew someone who had been in the hospital and saw him. I tried calling his mother and father, and, as you might expect, I got the same answer I've gotten every time I've called since David left. Fuck off. I became desperate and decided to survey the entrance to the emergency hospital in the hope of seeing him. I spent 4 nights parked outside the hospital in a spot where I could watch the entrance. My God, so many people come and go in and out of this place. I never realized how busy it is. Ambulances seem to be constantly arriving every night, delivering the sick and wounded. I got bored, so I took a book with me to read and a snack. Unfortunately, on the second night, I needed to go to the bathroom, so I got out of the car and went inside to find the restroom. I walked around until the security guy asked if I needed help. I decided to just ask David, to which I received a clear answer that the names of the doctors are not disclosed unless you have made an appointment, and then you need to go to the main entrance. I thanked him and left. On the 4th evening, I struck gold. Here he is. He walked from the doctor's parking lot to the entrance. My heartbeat quickened. I almost jumped out of the car and called his name. I was late because he disappeared inside the building. I had what I came for. I knew he was back in town. My next step was to try to talk to him and convince him to come home. It took several days of searching, but I managed to find a nice small apartment not too far from the hospital. It was a few blocks from my previous place of residence. It was a fairly tiny 2-room apartment, but it was furnished, and all I needed to buy was bed linen and towels and stock up on food. I wanted a furnished apartment because I didn't want to buy furniture. I hadn't decided how long I'd be here yet, so there was no point in buying a lot of things that I'd have to get rid of later. The building had underground parking for my car, and I saw that the building had security, although there was no doorman. It didn't take me long to get back into the swing of things in the ER. Daily patient flow gave me no rest. Heart attacks and strokes occurred regularly as Americans became obsessed with obesity. Why do people want to be overweight so much? Africans are almost never obese because they have a much better diet, they eat less, and they understand that they need to be as healthy as possible because medical care is so scarce. Well, all these ambulance clients and their insurance companies were paying my salary. 2 weeks after returning to Albany, I called my lawyer and asked for a meeting. 3 days later, she and I discussed the details of the divorce from Diana. There was not much property and money to divide, and I told her that Diana could keep all the things that we had in the apartment that we shared with her. I wrote to Diana about this when I left. Leanne had thought ahead and had her divorce petition prepared and ready to file. I told her to go ahead and do it. I was very surprised that Diana did not start the divorce. I believed that she really wanted to move on with her life and get rid of me. After discussing all the details, I left and returned home to my apartment. Arriving there, I realized that my life outside the hospital would be lonely. I needed a hobby. I called and found out that my bike would not be delivered to me for several months, so I decided to look for another one. I spent some time on the internet comparing motorcycles and decided to go look at KTM. Outside of town, we have 2 stores that sell KTM motorcycles. On my day off, I stopped by both, looked at what they had in stock, and settled on the 890 Adventure R. I asked them to bring some accessories to equip it for long trips. Racks, additional lights, a quick shift adapter, and a few other little things. All this made the bike great for riding on both paved and dirt roads. It wasn't cheap, but what the hell else could I spend my money on? I came home, and a guy in a suit was standing near the building. As I approached the entrance, he looked at his phone and then asked me, "Diana Walters?" "Yes, and who are you?" He handed me a large envelope. "You've been served." Before I could say anything, he walked away and took a photo of me with his cell phone holding the envelope, and then quickly turned around and walked to his car. Crap, I knew this would happen. So here's a quick guide to New York State divorce law. You can file for divorce in New York if you and your spouse have been separated for at least 1 year, or if the marriage has been irretrievably broken down for at least 6 months. My lawyer emailed me to tell me that Diana had been served with divorce papers. Leanne expected that in a week or so she would hear something from Diana's lawyer. Until then, nothing could be done. If Diana drags her feet, Leanne will go to court, file an application, and achieve its satisfaction after a year. So, in this case, Diana's long affair represents the irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. If she objects to the divorce, then the fact that we have not lived together for the past 6 months means that we must live separately for another 6 months, in which case the legal requirements will be met. Either way, the divorce will be final in about 6 months. Easy, easy. And then my doorbell rang. Okay, I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I followed David as he left the hospital at the end of his shift 2 days ago. I followed him to the apartment building where I assume he lives now. It's just a few blocks from our apartment. Well, mine, I guess. Now that I knew where he was, all I needed was the courage to go to him. I waited a few more days to work up the courage and dressed in an outfit that I knew David liked. He was simple, but at the same time, he always told me that I looked good. It was skinny jeans with high heels and a white sleeveless blouse. I put my hair in a ponytail just the way he liked it. Simple but elegant. If everything goes the way I want, the jeans and blouse can be removed quickly. I went into the store and bought a beer that I knew he liked. It was something called IPA. I don't know what that means, but I know he likes it or likes it. I also took a bottle of white wine for myself, California Chardonnay. Taking a deep breath, I pressed the button to call his apartment on the panel in the entrance. After several calls, he answered. "Hello. David, is that you? Who is this?" "It's me, Diana, your wife." Silence. "Can I go up?" Silence again. "I would like to talk to you." Silence again. After what seemed like an eternity, The door buzzer sounded, and I grabbed the door before he could change his mind. I took the elevator to his floor and walked to the door of his apartment on unsteady legs. I knocked. I was not surprised when my apartment intercom informed me that someone was calling my apartment. There are always people in apartments. Girls' tour guides sell cookies, Mormons sell Jesus and salvation, and politicians want to get elected or re-elected. But it was a surprise. It may have been a big mistake, but I let her in. When I heard a knock on the door, I waited a few seconds before opening it. I needed to take a deep breath and collect my thoughts and emotions. In the few minutes between her pressing the bell and knocking, 100 thoughts ran through my head. These were all questions I had and anger I wanted to vent. Before opening the door, I reminded myself that I was moving on. I'm in a better position than I was 6 months ago. I opened the door, and there she was. The look on her face was, well, she looked good. She looked tired, but good. The woman who was my wife, damn, she's still my wife. Just a little longer, she was just standing there, outside the door. I opened the door all the way and invited her to enter. Hello, Diana. What brings you here this evening? Hello, David. I wanted to talk to you. Lately, it's been hard to talk to you, and even harder to find you. I turned and walked down the short hallway to the kitchen. I saw that she had a bottle of wine in her shopping bag. I brought her a wine glass and placed it on the counter. She handed me the bottle. I was supposed to take the cap out, but I noticed it had a screw cap, so I opened it and poured it on her. She pulled a can of IPA beer out of the bag and handed it to me across the counter. I wasn't sure if alcohol was good for me right now, so I told her. No, thank you. I'm on duty at the hospital today. I took a glass with ice and poured some Diet Coke. I pointed to the table for us to sit down. I decided that what we needed to talk about was better done at the table rather than pretending we were all friendly and informal in the living room. Now was the right time to end this marriage so we could start signing the papers and our lawyers could get the judge to stamp them and be done with it. David got straight to the point. No preliminary, how are you, or good to see you after so many months. No, he looked as serious as I had ever seen him. My stomach dropped into a knot as I started. You scared me to death when you called the hotel and asked Katerina, tell me you're dead. He didn't know who was calling, and of course, he didn't recognize your voice. I was shocked when I returned home and found your note and engagement ring. I took his gold wedding ring out of my bag and slowly placed it on the table. He just looked but didn't touch it. He had no intention of approaching him. It was poison to him. I tried to talk to your family, but none of them wanted to give me time. Your father repeatedly told me to go to hell. I think I deserve it. Since you left, I've been in some kind of hell. David hastened to answer. What did you expect from me? I found out that you have been cheating for a long time, Darren's Ranger, and you decided I shouldn't do anything about it. What kind of idiot do you take me for? It doesn't matter. I understand what kind of idiot you take me for. Everything was wrong. What did it look like? I was lonely. You were always in the hospital. You were never home, and when you were home, you were always exhausted, and you never had time for me. So this meant that you could go and cheat with another man. Was it okay to ignore that we were married? It was normal. Why the hell couldn't you at least talk to me and tell me you wanted out of our marriage? Why lie to me for so long? David looked at the table and refused to look at me. I couldn't blame him, could I? He took the glass and then said, Have you signed the divorce papers? No, I don't want a divorce. I want us to be a normal family again. I am still your wife, and I want to be your wife and the mother of your children. David laughed. You must be joking. It was a statement, not a question. Are you completely crazy? No, I still love you very much. I'm still your wife, and I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize that. I want you and me to live together again. I want us to be lovers again. I want to be the mother of your children. He looked at me with wide eyes. Good God, woman, you are delusional. I'm not going to be your husband a day longer than I have to be. My lawyer is ready to go to court and file a divorce without you. You know that in New York, it is enough for us to live separately for 1 year or 6 months. if it is proven that our marriage is irretrievably broken. You did a good job of making it irrevocably destroyed. Now I've done my part. Everything is over. Understand that. You started it all almost 2 years ago. I'm just finishing. Honey, what do you need to do to forget this whole divorce and become a couple again? I don't want to be married to you, Diana. You separated us. Now we are going our separate ways. I had an amazing experience since leaving Albany, and I have no intention of going back to my old life. David, we can be good together. I know we can. No, we can't. You like cheating too much for there to be any relationship between us. This water has been poisoned. It's time for us to move on, Diana. Everything is over. Everything is over. You can go back to doing what you like. David stood up to tell me that our conversation was over. I drank the last of the wine from my glass, put it down, stood up, and moved towards him to kiss him. If he just lets me touch him, maybe there's a chance. If he remembers what it's like for me to be around him, he might want me again. The last thing he said to me was, "Don't forget to take this with you." He pointed to his wedding ring on the table. I took it, put it in my bag, and left his apartment. That's when I realized that it was all over between us. David was finished. He and I will never have a life together. I loved this man, and I threw him away for something that wasn't worth the price I had to pay. Darren wasn't a prize, come to think of it. He got what he wanted, and all it cost me was the husband I didn't want to lose. I'm so stupid. I deserved what I got. I need to sign the papers and do this. I have to let him go. This crazy woman tried to kiss me when she left my apartment. I don't want anything to do with her. Now she wants us to pretend nothing happened so we can go back to being a couple and have kids. God, she's not right in the head. This won't happen. The only thing that will happen, at least from my end, is that my lawyer will file the divorce and I can move on with my life. I needed a long, hot shower to wash away the stench of this situation. So I did, and then drank beer. I've been very busy here in Berlin, editing hundreds of hours of video and putting them into context. Dubbing the video was a challenging task. I do all this in English, and the second version is in German. Closed captioning is fun. A lot of work. The last month has flown by unnoticed for me. I sent David several emails with short videos and a few photos of him riding his Honda while we were in Africa. He looks good in the video, even where he abandoned his motorcycle. It was very funny for both of us. I recruited my friend to help me. It is her husband who works in the government and has access to information about people. She was able to get me some information about David before we started our trip to Africa together. You remember that I wanted to find out if he really is who he says he is, and not some imposter or serial killer. I was glad to hear that he really is who and what he says he is. So I asked Ingrid to ask her husband Nick if he could give me an update on David. I know it was a little mean, but I needed to know what was going on without asking David directly. I had my reasons. It took about a week, but she gave me what her husband could get. It looks like David is working in the emergency room again, and his lawyer has filed for a dissolution of marriage, as it's called in America. This means divorce. This was filed in court a few weeks ago, so thanks to American divorce laws, he will be officially divorced very soon. This is good, because I have important news for him. But before I tell him, I need to make sure some other things get done first. Affairs in America. I sincerely hope he likes the news I have. Yay, she's divorced. Today it's official. I have a document in my hands. God bless. Now I feel like I can move on with my life and do some of the things I want to do. I need to figure out a few things first. I receive calls and emails from Emma with news about her book and videos. She sent me a few videos, mostly showing me doing stupid things like throwing a motorcycle, or almost running into a small herd of cows on the road because I was looking at the sights and not paying attention to what was ahead. The cows and the motorcycle were not damaged, but my riding partner laughed a lot. I told her about what was happening in my life. We talked on the phone several times. I told her about the visit Diana paid me and how she hoped that I would forgive, forget, and take her back. The disrespect with which Diana treated me for so long was the deciding factor for me. I made a decision immediately after I learned about the extent of her betrayal. In my understanding, there was no turning back. This is what made me want to take a break from my life. Emma listened to me rant, and I realized she was tired of my problems. She wanted to tell me something. She said she had to go, but in a day or so, she would send me a letter. Emma mentioned that she had an announcement for me in a couple of weeks, but until then, I'll have to wait. I decided that we were talking about her book. I need to tell David the news, but I won't do it when he's still mad at his ex-wife. I need him to focus on me, perhaps a little more time, but not much more. It's been a week since the divorce was final, and I'm at the Albany airport about to board a flight to O'Hare in Chicago, then Heathrow, and finally Berlin. The flight is about 15 hours, and I'll come there tomorrow around noon. I need to see Emma. Almost 2 months have passed. I need to talk to her. I need to find out if there is anything left between us after our time together in Africa. If not, then I'll go back to my life and figure out what I want to do. Doctors Without Borders is recruiting staff in hospitals and looking for doctors to work in several parts of the world. They don't pay very much, and I'll have to see how badly my family wants me to pay off the student loans they gave me, but I'll figure it out somehow. I landed at Berlin-Brandenburg Airport, went through customs, picked up my bag at the carousel, and went outside to catch a taxi. I booked a hotel room Parkview, located right in the city center, in the Alexanderplatz area. This is a very nice hotel with all the modern amenities expected of a high-class hotel. It is not at all like the small, run-down shacks Emma and I stayed in during our stay in Africa. After I checked in, showered, and grabbed a bite to eat, my job was to find the building where Emma worked. I knew it was in the city center, but I had no idea how to get there. Of course, I turned to Google to figure out where to go. I saved the map of the city center and went for a walk. It was almost 4 p.m. when I reached her building. I decided that if Emma didn't want to see me, then I would play tourist for the rest of the time before my flight home to the USA. I tried to manage my expectations of what kind of reaction I would get by showing up, so to speak, unannounced on her doorstep. Surprisingly, the building was only a few blocks away, and the journey on foot took about 15 minutes. I walked inside and found the company's office in the lobby directory. I took the elevator up to the floor and went out into the lobby. I approached a very attractive young woman behind the counter. She greeted me in German. I smiled at her and asked if Emma Fisher was here and could I see her, please. The girl was surprised. To see me, I guess. Her eyes opened wide and her carefully sculpted eyebrows rose noticeably. The American asked Emma. She grabbed her phone and called. After a few seconds of very fast conversation, she looked at me and said, "Emma or someone else should be here in a minute. If you want, you can sit here and wait for her." She gestured towards the soft leather chairs. When I went to sit down, she grabbed the phone again and started talking, this time quietly, almost in a whisper, but very quickly in German, to the person she was calling. I thought I heard the word American a couple of times. She looked at me from the corners of her eyes. In the few minutes that I sat there, several women passing by looked me up and down. I didn't know what was happening. I was definitely under scrutiny. Do they really do this to every visitor? Do they really have so few visitors here? Another very attractive woman came up to me. "Dr. Walters." Before I had time to think, I answered, "Yes. Follow me, please." It wasn't hard to follow her shapely backside, encased in a very tight short skirt, with her high heels clicking on the polished granite floor. I then realized that I had told the receptionist that I was David Walters, not Dr. Gnaze Walters. Looks like they know more about me than I thought. We walked down a series of corridors, through fancy glass and steel offices. Many women looked at me. I wasn't sure if it was because I looked out of place, or because my fly was open. I quietly checked it. Did not have. Was there an announcement over the public address system that a strange American was roaming the hallways? After a long walk that looked like it would end in the lobby, I saw Emma coming around the corner. There was a wide smile on her face. She ran the last few steps to me and grabbed me in a very tight hug and kissed me on the lips. How many people were looking at us? My God, David, when did you get to Berlin? A few hours ago. I went to the hotel and cleaned myself up before coming here. I didn't want to show up here looking like a tramp. I thought that in this form, people from the security service would throw me out into the street. I figured she would ask why I came. This will tell me if we are back to acquaintances status. What days times we spent together in Africa are left behind, put on the shelf as beautiful memories, and our real lives are ahead, on their own, separately. Emma spoke, and the audience watched and listened. She took my hand, we turned and walked into the editing room where she was working. She wanted to show me what she was doing with the videos she had taken during her travels. Emma was wearing a very beautiful long and flowing black skirt, a long-sleeved white blouse and heels, but not as high as many of the other women. The way they walked and looked like there was a fashion show going on here. Her clothes were far from the motorcycle gear I was used to seeing her in. I decided to just go with the flow and see how things went over the next few hours. We talked about her work on the book and the videos that will be part of it. Some of the video will be posted on YouTube, and most of it will be posted on the publisher's website. People will pay a subscription to watch them. Do you have time to have dinner with me? I'd like to know what's new with you besides your book. And there are some things I would like to tell you about what happened to me. How long can you stay? Well, I can stay for a few days. My return flight is in 3 days, but I can easily change it if necessary. What do you mean? I didn't know what Emma was getting at. Either she asked me to stay longer, or she was wondering when she could get rid of me. I don't want to look like a leftover fish dish. Get rid of it quickly so it doesn't stink. I had enough of not being wanted by the women I thought cared about me, so I was on guard. I want to introduce you to my family. I told them a lot about you, and they really want to meet you. This answer could have knocked me off my feet. Oh, well, I guess I can do that. First, I need to eat, and I would really like to try some good German beer. I can leave and meet you after you get off work. No, you won't leave. I'm leaving now with you. It's been a few months since I've seen you, and I have big news for you. As we walked out, heads turned to look at us as we walked past. Emma held my hand. We walked back to my hotel. On the way, I asked her where she lived. She replied that she was in an apartment nearby. I briefly wondered if she had a husband she hadn't told me about. The last thing I wanted was to be the second man. It would have been easy enough to hide such information when we were traveling in Africa. But when she returned home, things would get serious very quickly. Reality bites you in the ass very quickly. I realized that I didn't know as much about Emma as I wanted or needed to know. Maybe I really want to meet her family. We got to the hotel and went into my room. So why does your family want to meet me? I told them about you and our joint travels in Africa. They are very eager to meet you since you come from the United States. I told them about my travels in Canada. My parents have been to the United States several times to visit my aunt in Florida. She lives there part of the year, I think, near Tampa. There are a lot of pensioners there. The weather is pleasant, especially if you have arthritis. Emma laughed. I think she has it, and she likes the beach. She took a sip of her cola. We can go to my parents tomorrow if you want. We will need to go by train. This will take about 6 hours. Where do they live? In Ulm, in the south. My father worked as an engineer at Volkswagen. He developed production systems. I find it all very boring, but he can talk about it for hours. I'll let him tell you all about it. My mother is an accountant, but she is now retired, like my father. I'll call them and tell them we're coming to visit. I decided it was best to go with the flow, at least for now. The conversation turned to me. So, are you officially a free man now? I smiled widely. Yes, I'm free, and I have documents to prove it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a sheet of paper folded into 4 and placed it on the table. I'm a free person. Emma turned it around and looked at it. I've never seen these before. Congratulations. How does it feel? This is good. It was inevitable from the moment I found out that she had been cheating for almost 2 years. She didn't want to be with me. If she had wanted to, she wouldn't have done what she did, and for as long as she did it. I shrugged and took a sip of my beer. She asked, "What do you want to do now?" There was a motive in this woman's questions. She dragged me several hundred miles to meet her family. I was being assessed. For several months, we had the level of intimacy that couples who are deeply committed to each other usually have. I thought that perhaps it was a German characteristic to quickly enter into a relationship after meeting someone. But no, it was completely different. I don't know completely. I'm not sure how much longer I want to stay in Albany. They want to see me in the hospital and will pay me well, but there is too much history there, and I need to find another part of the world to explore. You instilled in me a thirst for travel, you know. It's mostly your fault. I chuckled at these words. Emma smiled back. We spent the night in my hotel room and went to Emma's apartment in the morning so she could pack her bag. She made a few phone calls, and then we took a taxi to the train station. I love trains in Europe. They go on time. They are easy to get to, and the airports have much less paranoid security measures. We found our seats and made ourselves comfortable. When we arrived in Ulm, we were greeted by a couple in their 60s, and I immediately noticed that Emma looked very much like her mother. Same eyes and hair, but she had her father's smile. We met and went to look for her father's car, a Passat station wagon. In Europe, such cars are called estate cars. Their house was old, but in excellent condition. The interior has recently been thoroughly renovated with all modern appliances and amenities. I complimented her father, Carl, by telling him that my father was a builder and would have greatly approved of the work he had done. Carl seemed to grow taller from this compliment. I was offered a beer, and Emma went to get drinks for everyone while we sat. The looks I was getting just screamed, "Tell us all about yourself." But they started with, "So, you are an American. Where in America?" I tried to exude as much charm as I could. They say that the first impression is a lasting impression. So all the manners that my mother and father taught me were put into action. Albany, New York. North of New York, about 2.5 hours away. Lots of nods about this. Thank God Emma came back with the drinks. Beer for Carl and me, red wine for her mother, and a glass of ice water for myself. I started connecting the dots. So we were sitting in the living room, and when the silence became a little uncomfortable and her parents' eyes bore laser holes in my head, I decided that if I wanted to survive the next hour, I needed to start a conversation. The best way to start a conversation is to ask people about themselves, so that's what I did. I knew they wanted to know everything about me, but I turned my attention to them and used what little Emma told me to get them to talk about themselves. It didn't take long for Carl to start talking. He started galloping away, telling me about the superior quality of engineering in Volkswagen and the other wonderful cars they make. Emma's mother, Maria, was much more modest. She worked for many years at a large accounting firm, focusing primarily on auditing. She retired when Carl did, and they planned to travel, especially to warmer climes, when they were older. They wanted to buy a holiday home in Spain or Greece, somewhere on the water where it's warm in winter. Germany is now too cold for them in the winter. They deserved a break from the cold. They have friends who do the same, so they might be able to find accommodation nearby. They'll look. It was like my own family, surprisingly similar. My parents bought a huge van, one with a big diesel engine, and they planned to see the country. They also wanted to spoil their grandchildren. I know they thought I would add to their number besides my brother and his brood, but it didn't work out. It happened. A big dinner was being prepared in the kitchen. Carl continued his review of the benefits of German engineering and German beer, while Emma watched me closely as I watched her. Carl did not fail to tell me that it was he who gave Emma the start of motorcycling. He has owned motorcycles for most of his adult life and still has a BMW 1E200 in his garage. He also has a smaller motorcycle for local use, but a larger BMW for long-distance travel. Maria travels often with her husband, and they travel for several days at a time. Not as long as before, but they still like to travel long distances. He will be proud to show me his motorcycles tomorrow. In the evening, we ate. I felt like I was being scrutinized to get some kind of seal of approval, almost like being in an interview. What are my goals in life? Where do I see myself in 10 years? And so on. I expected to be given a different bedroom than Emma, but was a little surprised to find that Maria had provided fresh towels for both of us in the same bedroom. We hugged each other and rested for a few minutes. I whispered in her ear, "How long?" Emma didn't move. "Long?" "Yes, how long?" "Long for what?" "How many weeks?" "You remember that I am a doctor, right? I know what a pregnant woman looks and behaves like. I'm pretty sure you're pregnant. I think about 3, maybe 3.5 months. Oh, Lord. I counted and put the dots. The dots said no, they shouted to me. I will become a father. The woman on the bed next to me smiled at me and stood up from the bed to grab her bag. She took out a plastic test and handed it to me. 2 blue stripes. My world changed in an instant. I did the math, and it turned out that the place was somewhere there. St. Louis, maybe Dakar. Only about 3 months. About a month ago, I visited a doctor in Berlin. In a week, I am scheduled for an ultrasound. I came prepared for the fact that Emma and I would move on, not as lovers, but as friends. I know what time and distance do to relationships. What was once a hot frenzy cools in the light of day and reality. But a big part of me wanted there to still be a connection between us that wasn't broken, which would light up again. And it happened. Just a minute. I crawled out of bed, went to my bag, and began to look for something I had taken with me. I took this just in case. I took it in my hand and returned to bed. Emma sat down. I opened the small box and took out the ring. "Will you marry me?" Her face immediately became brighter and her eyes widened. "Yes, yes, yes." I hugged Emma as tightly as I could until I remembered that there might be other people wanting to hear this news. I got up, quickly got dressed, and opened the door to see 2 very surprised people standing in the hallway. "We'll go out now." Emma quickly got dressed, and we all went into the living room to share our news. Of course, Maria knew that her daughter was pregnant. Mothers always know such things. Carl, surprisingly, was not. Upset when he learned that his daughter was going to marry an American. What can I say? 2 days later, David and I returned to Berlin by train. We had a lot to do, and I wanted him to be with me at the doctor's appointment for an ultrasound. David spent some time on the phone with the hospital where he works, and of course with his family, to share our news. His mother and father screamed amid the noise of his brother, his wife, and their children. I heard words like, "David is going to marry that German girl. He spent all that time in Africa." They were happy to receive the news, and especially that I was pregnant. I was the next one to take a break from work, but I told the publisher that I would work from home on the book part and do as much as I could with the videos. When we arrived for the ultrasound, we were told shocking news. The doctor ran a wand over my stomach to find a heartbeat. It took a few seconds, and David stared at the monitor. I saw the expression on his face and then his smile. I immediately realized that everything was fine. My doctor made several buzzing sounds and finally let us listen to the heartbeat. But then a surprise awaited us. I heard David say, "Oh, wow," which surprised me. I heard the machine making heartbeat sounds, but they were very fast. David looked at me. "We will have twins." The doctor smiled. I cried. We got married in Berlin. Maria and Carl, several of her friends, and several people from the publishing house were present, about 30 in total. It seems that the day I showed up at the office, the rumor spread like wildfire among the women that the American Emma talked so much about was here. They all got to actually see the doctor riding around on a motorcycle. There were many decisions to be made. We decided to go to Albany for now and find housing. This will allow us to be closer to my family, and we will have space for Maria and Carl to visit us as much as they want. I spoke with the hospital and agreed to a shorter shift cycle in exchange for a lower salary. I was fine with that. I had a pregnant wife with whom I wanted to spend every free minute. The following months were hectic. Emma grew bigger. We found a nice 4-bedroom house that would be a great place to raise children. It was only a few minutes' drive from my brother's house. Marcy and Emma were already busy decorating the house and planning what we would do as our family grew. My wife, Emma Maria Fisher Walters, gave birth to beautiful twin girls, weighing about 3 kilograms each. Our life became a constant stream of feeding, dirty diapers, and more feeding. I forgot what sleep is. Maria and my mother are in fierce competition for the title of best grandmother. My dad and Carl are in a similar competition to see who can outdo who in the design and construction department. They have big plans for remodeling and expanding my home. I can't keep up with them, and I'm not going to try. Just when you think life has given you a kick, something good comes out of it all. I lost my wife because of her need for sex with other men, the woman I loved and thought she loved me. But that's not true, and she's lost respect for me and our marriage. She hid her infidelity from me for a long time, and ultimately it meant the end of our marriage. I felt guilty, but she decided to date another man. I don't think she realized there would be consequences for her actions. Meeting Emma was purely an accident. If I hadn't gotten a flat tire while eating ice cream in Newfoundland, I probably would never have met her. And where would I be today? Who knows? But I know for sure that meeting her is the best thing that could happen to me. I have a new life, a wonderful wife, 2 children, and a future to look forward to. This is the life I wanted. We will have many children. Shortly after I moved to America, I was hanging out with my sister-in-law Marcy. We bought children's furniture at IKEA. One woman looked very intently at Marcy. Obviously, she knew who she was. Marcy turned and addressed her. "Hello, Diana. That's all. No, how are you doing?" Short and to the point. Of course, I knew who Diana was, but no one ever showed me a photograph of her. I knew it was David's ex-wife, the one who had been having an affair for quite some time before David discovered it. "Hi, Marcy. How are you?" Then I turned around, and my huge pregnant belly was completely visible. I wanted to see what she looked like, and unsurprisingly, she turned out to be quite pretty. Marcy looked at Diana and said in a tone that spoke for itself, "Diana, this is Emma. She is David's wife. We buy children's furniture." This left no doubt that she wanted Diana to know what she had thrown away. She will have twins. With that, Marcy turned, gently took my hand, and we walked away. We picked up our purchases from the warehouse and had Marcy and Paul help us load them into the truck. We went out to eat, and I got Marcy to tell me the whole story about Diana and how stupid she was. I already knew a lot of this, but it was helpful to learn it from a different perspective. David's family never talked about her. She was old news, best forgotten. That evening, when David returned home, we made love. I dreamed about how we would ride motorcycles and travel. I'm not sure this will happen anytime soon. David's father and mother own a huge motor home and offered to lend it to us if we wanted to travel with the kids. Motorcycles will probably gather dust for now. I need to think about this. This could be fun. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.